The Batman is among those movies over the years where I went into with low expectations, really low, and I was completely taken off guard. Now, maybe I see this movie or hold this movie in high regard because I went in with such low expectations. That's always a possibility. And maybe part of my love for the movie is my bias toward Batman. That's always a possibility. I don't, however, think that is the case. I think this was overall a very well done movie. Now, there hasn't been much by way of leaks, news, and stories going out about the Batman or many other comic book movies. Not that there hasn't been news, but Avengers Doomsday has sucked the oxygen out of the room when it comes to news and leaks. You hear about Avengers Doomsday all day long, several times a day, article upon article. Look, I am on a lot of these comic book and geek news and movie websites, and I am telling you, it is riddled. Marvel, if for nothing else, they have been wise in selectively leaking out certain things to constantly keep this movie in the press. It's the most wisest low budget marketing campaign ever. And I think it's working. I think it's working. It's generating some excitement, it's generating some questions, but overall, I think it's been good. Anyway, let's get into this article right here from comicbookmovie.com. The Batman 2's working title revealed. Mattson Tomlin says sequel feels new and dangerous. That's interesting. New and dangerous. The Batman Part 2 is quickly taking shape and is currently scheduled to begin filming in the UK this April, which is funny because I could have swore I had read or seen something not too long ago that showed this movie was being filmed already, but maybe I probably am mistaken. Maybe I just thought it was being filmed already and it wasn't. The sequel has been a long time coming as the Batman was revealed in 2022. That's a whopping 5+ year gap between sequels, which is a long time for sequels. Typically a sequel movie is within, I want to say like 2 years or so, 3 at the most. But there have been movies that have had a longer time between sequels. But yeah, thanks to Hollywood North buzz, we now know that filmmaker Matt Reeves' DC Return will shoot under the working title Vengeance 2. And yes, the Batman working title was, as you likely guessed, Vengeance. It's a good title. I don't know if that's a title they'll stick with. Maybe that title is just a placeholder. Maybe it's the actual title. We'll see. Coincidentally, the same time the news came out, the Batman Part 2 writer, Mattson Tomlin, responded to a fan writing, "We worked exceptionally hard to tell a story worthy of the character, something that feels new and dangerous. The bar couldn't be higher." That's a tall order, saying that the bar couldn't be higher. I will say the bar for cinematic presentation of Batman movies, in my humble opinion, is the Dark Knight trilogy. To me, that's the bar for presentation. That doesn't mean everything in those movies was exactly as you would want them from Batman. But as far as the presentation is concerned, I don't think it gets much better than that in cinema. From what I've seen so far, that movie was creme de la creme, cream of the crop. It was some of the best cinematic Batman I have seen outside of the Batman cartoons. Looking forward to people seeing it and being able to talk about it at length. Tomlin, who worked on the first movie but didn't receive an official credit at it, can't begin to describe what this film means to me. That says a whole lot. Of course, this film is his baby, so you would expect him to say this, but not necessarily with this level of enthusiasm, which tells me that he's really confident that people will, in fact, love this movie. Later, he added, "We did our actual, literal push beyond the limit best." He's really shooting for the stars with, how far he said they went with this movie. And if they did in fact go this far, if they did in fact put this much effort into what they did with this movie, then I'm here to tell you this is probably going to be absolutely stellar. Who can promise that, right? Nobody can promise that. But that first Batman movie, they spent, I looked this up. So they spent $200 million on the movie itself. The movie made $772 million. $185 million was spent on, was it 185? Let me see. Production budget. No, marketing. It was 135,000 spent on marketing. So between marketing and the actual production of the movie, there's about 235, I said thousand, $235 million spent, and it made 772 million. Now, what's the split between what the studio brought back and what the theaters made, or how much their partners made? I don't know the splits on all of that, but I'll just suffice it to say $772 million off of a movie that cost you $200 million to make. Yeah, I'd said that I would say that that's a good return on investment, especially given the fact that nobody really knew how to take this movie. I was one of those people. I was not convinced that Robert Pattinson would be a good Batman. My youngest son had a talk with me about some of the roles Robert Pattinson had played. I didn't follow his career, didn't really know anything of the movies he was in outside of Twilight. That's all I know him of. And I never watched through the Twilight movies, so I don't know anything about him. I just know him pretty much being one of the faces of that movie. And I was just like, him as Batman? I don't know. But it worked. It worked. He was smaller than I expected him to be, but there was a lot of things that went into that. COVID being one of was that COVID times? Man, it's so hard for me to remember. Yeah, I think that was COVID times. Yeah, it was. It was. So there's a lot of factors at play. With all that said, the movie cinematically and presentation was amazing. Robert Pattinson's depiction of the boy who's struggling with the death of his parents still, while trying to be something good for the city, while trying to save his city, while also trying to battle his own demons. I think you really saw the intricacy of that struggle in this movie that you've seen in some of the other Batman movies, but maybe not to this degree. I think Matt Reeves focused on that a little more. You saw Batman really kind of clumsy in this movie, which I know is sacrilege. Batman always has everything figured out, but I think that was done on purpose because this was meant to be a Batman year one. He's just getting into this, just figuring everything out, just coming into his own. And I think what we're going to get in this next movie is a way more matured and capable Batman. It's hard to ask for more than that. The Batman ended by setting the stage for what sounded like a team up with the Joker and the Riddler. However, many fans expressed disappointment that Reeves looked set to focus on two villains who have received plenty of screen time over the years. I would agree with this. The Joker, maybe not so much the Riddler. I don't know if the Riddler has really gotten the proper screen time deserved. Yes, the Riddler was in the Dark Knight trilogy. I understand that, and had enough screen time, but Matt Reeves' Riddler, to me, is a lot more menacing. And I was really curious to see a lot more from this Riddler, in my humble opinion. I definitely wanted to see more. Having the clown prince of crime take center stage in the Batman Part 2 also feels very reminiscent of The Dark Knight in 2008. It no longer looks like that's the plan, but we are likely getting a Two-Face, seeing as he, his father, and wife have all been cast in the movie. It's worth noting that Two-Face screen time in Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins sequel was relatively minor, which is true. If Gilda Dent, the Holiday Killer in the comics, is also taking center stage, there could be some big twist in store. Hush, Jeremiah Arkham, and Phantasm are all rumored or theorized to appear. Either one of those, I think, would be worthy appearances. I think they would be welcome appearances. We'll see what Matt Reeves does with this, what direction he goes in. This sounds like good news. Sounds like this is going to be a really exciting Batman. I'm not sure if this was intended to be a trilogy. I hope it is, because the way they're making this seem, I'm not going to want it to end with just two movies.